things that are going to need to happen before you start installing the frets. One is you need to make sure that the fret slots are deep enough to accept the fret. If you look at a cross section of a fret, it's like a T shape with a round top, right? So there's just a little cross section there, right? And so this bottom part, the bottom of the T there, is what goes down into the fret slots, and it has some little tangs on it. Some little tangs so that they're coming out so that when you press it in, it resists them from backing out again, right? And prevents the frets from coming out. The problem that is most prevalent in installing frets is when the slots aren't deep enough. And if the slots aren't deep enough, there's no place for this bottom of the T to go down in, and then there's no amount of hammering that you can do to get it down into that slot without completely destroying the fretboard. So our first task really is to make sure that that slot is deep enough to accept those. So what you're going to want to do, use some of the compressed air to blow out all the dust and everything, the sawdust that's in there. And what we have is these little tools. I mean, we just made these tools, so these are free, right? Just leftover fret wire. And what we've done is we've taken a length of fret wire and put a little cut right in one edge so that we could bend it over. And then on this portion that's bent over, we used a file and we filed off the tangs. So that means that the fret material will go down in and also come out again. It won't embed itself in. So the little tangs have been filed off. And so by doing that, what we can do is we can set it in there, see that the crown of the fret is sitting on the fretboard, then you know that that slot is deep enough. And I'm going to check it in multiple places on the same fret slot because as you know, as you've been sanding, you might sand more on one side than on the other, so it might be perfectly all right on one side, but too shallow on the other. So you're going to check every slot in multiple places and look carefully that fret wire is going to be able to seat fully into the slot. If it can't, there'll just be no end in problems in trying to get that. The fret will set up too high, which will buzz the strings, which will mean a lot of work later on, and it's a whole lot easier to get it right in the first place. Okay, so that's our first step. So what happens then if the slot isn't deep enough? Well, we have fret saws. So these fret saws are 20 thousandths wide, and they're used to clean out the frets. And sometimes I'll do that even after I've blown out the sawdust. I'll just run the fret saw through there just to make sure there's nothing left in there. And so this saw is exactly the right width to go through this slot. And also, you'll notice the direction that I'm cutting with this saw, I'm pulling. And if you look at the teeth, you can see all the teeth are facing this way. So it only cuts in one direction. So I need to pull, it's a pull saw, so I need to pull that way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to check each fret, and if it needs to be deepened, then I'm going to do that with the saw. You know, only go down as far as you need to, right? That you don't want to have extra slot if you don't need it. So I clean that out, I check it, and I check every one all the way across. If you want, this edge right here could be a little bit sharp still, so just use the sanding pad and just kind of run along there and knock off any sharp edge that's there. The other thing that we'll want to do, we'll want to get just one coat of True Oil, just a super light, thin coat of True Oil on the fretboard right here, and that's the only type of finish that we'll put on the fretboard. The rest of the neck's going to get more True Oil later on. But one of the first things that you're going to want to do is just wipe on that finish. And if you keep it super thin, barely there, it'll dry really fast and it's not going to slow you down as far as your operations are concerned. We want to do that before we install the fret. They clean it out, right? Because what happens is if you put the finish on before you've cleaned out the slots, then the finish just kind of gets into the sawdust that's in there and makes a paste that, you know, when it hardens is more difficult to remove. So we clean all of those out, put just a light, super light coat so that it'll dry fast, and then you're ready for installing the frets. And that's really the only finish. We just want to seal it, but we don't want any buildup of finish on the fretboard. We want it to stay nice and smooth and with no finish buildup. And when I'm done with that, then I'm ready to start installing the frets.